Greetings, Taku Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, this is Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Daredevil episode review right here on Otaku Assemble! Weekly, and as always, here to bring you the latest in today's Daredevil episode review. And this is my review of Season 2, Episode 5, entitled Kinbaku, which apparently I discovered is a form of Japanese bondage. Now, for the record, I didn't know that beforehand. I had to look this up. I had to research this. Just so there's no misunderstanding about what I'm into. Nah, homie don't roll like that. Homie don't roll like that. But I do think it is a clever title because the literal translation means tight binding. And once discovering that, it dawned on me, I think a better way of looking at it, and I think it's the theme for this episode, is more of the ties that bind. And it's funny because, of course, we get that in Matt and Elektra's relationship, but funny enough, we also get that in what Karen was doing in this episode, which I'll touch on the latter first and then go on the former, since that's what I'll spend most of this review discussing. So, the idea of the ties that bind, in terms of how does that apply to Karen? Well, in this episode, of course, Karen is still furthering the investigation, looking into Frank's past, but this episode she goes and she reconnects with Ben's old editor over at the Bulletin. And so she's working with him and trying to uncover some, newspaper articles, some past story on the tragedy that befell Frank's family. And so I thought it was, I really dug it, and I thought it was funny too, because if you all will recall from the season 1 finale, during the funeral scene, during Ben's funeral, how Ben's widow, when she talked with Karen, she made the comment that, Karen was the daughter that Ben never had. So once again, sort of that tie that binds them to how Karen is still, the investigative reporter inside of her, she still has that. And that's helping her, further her quest in uncovering Frank's backstory. So I thought that was really cool. Now I'm going to go ahead and transition over to the main crux of the episode, which, of course, is Elektra, her introduction, and the backstory we get for her and Matt for their relationship, which we get in flashbacks in this episode. So, I will say, though, that I did have a little bit trouble with some of the flashbacks, and this is what I mean. The fallout between her and Matt, the event that actually broke them up, that I thought was well done. That I thought made perfect sense, that it's sort of the first time Matt's had to question, that inner devil, that inner darkness, in the first 3 episodes, where this question is brought back up since season 1. We've had it in season 1, then it gets brought up in the first 3 episodes of season 2 about the extent to which Matt won't go to, that line he won't cross, killing another human being, he just won't do it. I think it's really interesting that I guess you could say the first big moment, the first major time where he's actually had to answer that question, where he's had to come to that crossroad, came from Elektra. And not only that, but it happened when Matt was very much still a civilian, before he had any sort of intent or any sort of call to action to do anything vigilante-wise to take justice into his own hands. No, it comes from Elektra while he's still in school, still a civilian, and it's the most personal because it is the man responsible for his father's death. So yeah, that I thought made perfect sense. That sort of event would be the thing that would drive the wedge between him and Elektra. What I thought didn't work out so well was everything we got for them prior to this. The development of this sort of relationship between them two, I don't think we spent enough time with them. I don't think we learned enough about them individually. We know enough about Matt, certainly, but I don't think we got enough of Elektra to see what the attraction would be, what the chemistry would be, other than the fact that she's hot, exotic, rich, and Matt is lustful for her. Outside of those four things, I don't see how these two could be in any type of real relationship to begin with. Now, if the writers were going for, no, this was more of just a young, lustful, sort of fun-filled fling, then by all means, okay, yeah, that worked out fine. But when Matt made the comment to her that you understand me more than anyone else, I did not get that. I did not get that at all. And once again, it goes back to, I felt like there wasn't enough time spent with them in the flashbacks prior to that major event to make us feel like that. It's not the same thing like what we got in season 1 with Stick. With Stick, yeah, we had a few flashbacks that established his relationship with Matt, and then of course all of their dialogue in that episode in season 1, we got enough to establish, okay, this is the relationship, this is what happened, this is how they fell out, okay, and this is the status quo for their relationship now, okay? Here's the thing though, Stick provided such a major role in Matt's life, in his backstory, in his history, to that all we had to do was just fill in a few particulars, and we pretty much got the overall scheme of what that relationship was. With Elektra, on the other hand, I don't see that. We got a few very brief foreshadowing of her in season 1, and then these few scenes in this episode. Once again, I'm not seeing the relationship elements. I don't see it. I don't see it. But I will say this. I think that having this presented to us now, at the exact same time when Matt's trying to sort of develop a romance with Karen, I think that's really cool because it did create a parallel. It did create a comparison and a contrast between those two different relationships. But I will say this, as far as Elektra's characterization is concerned, granted, I haven't read much Elektra in the comics. And what I did read of her, she was full-blown assassin, cold-hearted, yes. Calculating, yes. Violent, absolutely. But at no point in the little Elektra that I read in the comics did I get the sense that she might actually be psychotic. This portrayal, on the other hand, that question kept coming up all episode long as I'm watching it. Is like, she might actually be clinically insane. She might legitimately be cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. And not in the same, and you know, and it's kind of funny because, to draw another parallel, Karen's whole thing about trying to dig and trying to get the right narrative for Frank's story, right? Because she felt like it wasn't fair that all of the newspapers are pretty much just making Frank out to be this psychopath. She's like, no, there's more to the story there. You know, that's a funny little parallel because with Elektra, I'm sorry, I can't help but think that this chick wouldn't just show up in Matt's apartment again with a katana to his throat. But, like I say, I do like the characterization so far. This has only been one episode, so it's not enough for me to make up my entire mind about her character yet. But I do like what we're getting so far. The last question I have about Elektra in this episode, and then, of course, her involvement in the story for the rest of the season. What is her end game? And what is she really trying to get at reconnecting with Matt? Because here's the thing. It seemed, you know, Matt accused her of manipulating him. Oh, you're trying to manipulate me again. But to what ends? What's the end game there? And even throughout the episode, you know, having Matt show up at that business tower during the business meeting. Why was Matt supposed to be there? I don't get it. Now, I will say this. Was it planned or was it just coincidence? Was it just happenstance that Matt happens to be at her penthouse when the Yakuza come after her? And, of course, we found out she has Matt's costume. So she knew what Matt was doing. She knew who Matt was. She knew his secret identity the entire time, just like Stick did, which I appreciate, which I dug. But the fact that she had that costume, now I have to beg the question, did she intend for him to be there at that moment? Because she knew the Yakuza would come for her. Even though she was like, oh, I'm renting out the penthouse under an alias, but I knew they'd track me down eventually. And then Matt just happens to show up, and then she just happens to have his costume. Was that plan all along? And if it was planned all along, how does that play in now? Okay, the Yakuza's coming back into the picture. We know that clearly she's at odds with them. Well, does this tie into what Stick was talking about in season 1 when he was trying to prep Matt for the war? Which, of course, that does foreshadow, and it could lead into Shadowland being adapted into the series. But is there a connection between all of this? Or is this just, okay, Matt just knows 2 people who seem to be able, you know, duke it out with the Yakuza? Questions. So anywho, that pretty much wraps up my thoughts on this episode. Like I said, pretty solid episode, pretty good. I do like Elektra's characterization so far. I just don't buy the relationship that her and Matt had based off of what we were given in the flashbacks. Perhaps we could get even more flashbacks as the season goes along, but as it stands right now, you want me to believe that these 2 were in a relationship? No. Lovers, yes, but a full-blown relationship, I'm not buying it. Not from what I got in this episode. So, I want to thank you all. Once again, I want to thank you all for joining me for this review. If you like this review, please feel free to thumb it up. If you want to share it with others, if you have friends who you think would like this review, please feel free to share this review. And if you want to see more of my reviews, please feel free to subscribe to the OAW YouTube channel. Annotation will be above my head right here. It's been there all video. With that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief. I'm signing off, and until next time, peace.